Let me tell you the newest, hottest, craziest news in the world of crypto. If you haven't been paying attention, obviously the big news right now is Bitcoin spot ETF approval, rejection, what's going on. And because of the news of like some people thinking they have an inkling of what's right, what's accurate, we see the market going up. Another analyst says, no, it's not going to be approved. Market goes down. Lots of volatility. Well, just yesterday, we saw that. There was a quick drop. The overall crypto market, really, Bitcoin lost $5 billion. And now, if you look at what's going on this morning, it's all coming back, and probably to the chagrin right here of Mr. Gary Gensler. So here's the skinny on the situation. Spot Bitcoin ETFs could be rejected if the SEC wants more time. Bitcoin slumped as $400 million liquidated in 2 hours. So as around 6 a.m. on Wednesday, the 3rd, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., we were cruising, went up to 46K, coming down a little bit. And then all of a sudden this report came out and people started to sell. And a lot of people right now, for whatever reason, I'm not necessarily a fan of it, are trading crypto in a leveraged manner. So like they could get anywhere up to 20x leverage, potentially more. So a little bit of a drop causes liquidations and margin calls. And that's exactly why Bitcoin went from 45K to 40.5 thousand in the blink of an eye. Obviously at this point in time, just for posterity's sake, Bitcoin trading at 43.8, making a nice recovery. So the cloud, the EMA cloud, almost went bearish, but then obviously it was able to save itself. So as of now, the market cap of crypto, 1.65 trillion, recently was up to 1.85. So lost a good chunk there. Bitcoin trading at 43.8 has a market cap of 860 billion. So that's holding well, but other ones got hit a bit harder, such as Solana. So feel free to check that out. Bitcoin ETF denial report did not cause 8% Bitcoin price crash, but it did. I really don't get some of these articles. A report claiming that the SEC will quote unquote will reject the spot Bitcoin ETF is not what is behind the Bitcoin price crash below 42,000, according to one lawyer. Not even a trader, not even an analyst saying, no, that wasn't it. But let's read this and you're gonna be like, well, that's the dumbest article I've ever read. I know people are desperate for a narrative, but Bitcoin didn't sell off because some silly report about ETF denial. It sold off because nothing goes straight up and it's an easy grab for liquidity to do a long squeeze. In short, the market was overbought. Well, something could be overbought and remain overbought and get more overbought. That's a bubble. But does this lawyer not really understand that even in a bubble-esque scenario, once again, for a very, very short time frame, that when you have a negative piece of news, if one person sells, it could cause a bit of a capitulation, especially in a highly levered market when right now people are trading 20, 50, 100x. So we're just a bunch of margin calls. We can see it. There was $400 million liquidated within the tune of two hours. So of course there's going to be selling. So I feel like this article, like someone just had to write something and like, it just like is, in my opinion, doesn't really make the most sense whatsoever. So just wanted to share that because some people are saying it did cause it. It didn't. Obviously it caused it, but a bigger picture of, oh, okay, like what could actually go down here? Like what happens? Because as I'm filming this on January 4th, this is the start of the window when we're expecting to hear from the SEC between January 4th and January 10th. So I think we should look at both sides of like who's saying what. Obviously, we have one analyst saying it's not going to get approved. We have many other analysts saying it will get approved. Let's talk about in the very short term of what could happen to the price in either direction. Bitcoin ETF looks very likely given the bureaucratic SEC steps. What they're referring to is basically everyone saying that, oh, wow, we are going to get approval. Yes, there's one guy saying it's not going to happen, but other people are saying, look at the amount of times that they're meeting with the SEC. Literally at this point, daily, every single day you can open up Fintuit and you're going to find another big crypto. There's about a dozen of these companies who are trying to get these ETF approvals are meeting with the SEC. Doesn't really happen that common to do so many meetings for then to just get disapproved. Spot Bitcoin ETFs could get end of week approval according to Fox. So this came out yesterday and they're basically just excited for like, and what they're looking at is the amount of times meeting. From there, we have very legitimate, prominent players signing up to be APs, authorized participants, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. Just think of all the big banks. An authorized participant, if you haven't heard of that term before, it is the people who ensure, like when you create an ETF, an exchange traded fund, it's a basket. It's a basket of something. This basket will have Bitcoin in it. But anyway, it's really held together by the sponsor / the issuer, but you have APs who go out and buy the things that should be in the basket. They're actually putting the things in the basket, and then they monitor theoretically what the basket should be worth and its actual worth. And then if they ever need to arbitrage it a little bit up, a little bit down, so it's at a fair, transparent value, that's what they do. Goldman Sachs is in talks to play the key role of being the authorized participant for BlackRock and Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF. This happens all the time. Some of the biggest ETFs actually have multiple authorized participants. And it seems like right now, what we have going on is many companies vying to be the ETF. We have majorly BlackRock and Goldman and JP Morgan to be the APs, the authorized participants. And most of these people are signing up to use Coinbase as the custodian. So you need the custodian, where's the Bitcoin held? You need the APs, the people who make sure everything's in check. And that's going to most likely be JP Morgan, BlackRock, potentially both. And there could be other ones in there. And then obviously we have about a dozen companies who are actually trying to be the sponsor / the issuer of the ETF. But with everything that's going on, all these meetings, all these legitimate companies with billions and billions and billions of dollars behind them, all the meetings, that's why Fox is saying, hey, pretty soon. And we also know that even if it's not by the end of this week, mid next week is January 10th. So that's the date that everyone has like kind of circled on their calendar. Bitcoin could rally to 50,000 as Gensler faces pressure to approve ETF. At this point, even according to various SEC members, they can't even come up with a reason of why this is still not approved, especially with the fact that we already have a Bitcoin futures ETF. It's kind of insane that we don't have one right now. And it seems to be a political thing. Once again, Gensler and basically him hooking his political wagon to Elizabeth Warren. And then Elizabeth Warren obviously doesn't like it because she thinks all crime in the world is paid for it. And she, as I alluded to in previous videos, she speaks half-truths. She makes up facts. She skews data. She is not a fair, unbiased party when it comes to talking about really crypto and its intersection with the government and regulations. She literally just makes things up on the fly. And obviously buddies with Gary Gensler. Gensler runs the SEC. But even with that, there's people right under Gensler in the SEC who are like ripping their hair out saying, dude, how have we not approved it? It makes no legal sense whatsoever. So anyway, in the short term, there are some analysts saying if it does get approved, we could quickly see Bitcoin rip up to 50,000. On the flip side of that, though, there are analysts saying if it doesn't, well, we could see some liquidations and people saying, okay, I don't want any like attachment to this. And we could see a quick drop to about 35. At this moment in time, we're trading about 43K. So it seems like plus or minus 7K is like just an estimate in the very, very short term on Wall Street. Will it be true? I have no idea. Will it be false? I have no idea. All I know is I'm invested in it for the long term. So I'm in it for the long haul. In the short term, yes, I enjoy paying attention and seeing the volatility, but this is a long-term investment for me. So in terms of the bigger view of like where could this go post approval, which I do personally believe it will get approved, expected Fed rate cuts support bull case in Bitcoin, but there is a catch: recessions and triggered rotation of money out of risk assets. So what's going on here? Basically what they're saying is, hey, historically, when you jack up rates, you go coast and then you start bringing them down. At some point in bringing the rates down, we see a big money movement into riskier assets. So money out of risk assets. So, all right, what does that actually mean? There's a catch. Past data source from Macro Micro shows that the early stages of the supposedly stimulatory Fed rate cut cycle are often characterized by the economy on the brink of recession and brief but notable rally in the US dollar, a global reserve currency backed by the world's largest and most liquid government bond market. In other words, if history is a guide, Bitcoin may see a brief and intense bout of risk aversion later this year after the Fed begins cutting the benchmark federal fund rate. So it's saying, hey, this will actually end up being good as people just feel less of the downward pressure from the Fed, but maybe not immediately, depending on the market and the economy's opinion, really everyone looking at it of like, are we doing this because we're close to recession? Are we not recession? And they're probably going to be able to measure that through the movement in the bond market, aka also the yield market, but also the US dollar. So tracking the dollar index DXY. So that's where we're at right now in the world of crypto. Obviously, a lot of volatility, a lot of movement, a lot of anticipation of what should be going down roughly within the next week. Right now, in the short and in the long term, I'm very bullish. I do think it's approved. I think Gensler basically painted himself into the corner. And in the long term, I mean, there's so many examples of it, but our dollar is always losing buying power. There's inflation is always going on. And that's what happens when you keep printing and making money out of thin air, unlike Bitcoin, which has a finite theoretical max of 21 million. And obviously it's going to be even less than that. So for me, I'm bullish. I hope to be right. Obviously I can't tell the future, but I see no reason to not be cautiously optimistic in both the short and in the long term.